tell the story. Now, I read somewhere that research in neuroscience reveals that our brains are hardwired to respond to stories. Now, I know that's true for me. I find myself getting drawn in to well-told stories. Well, there's no doubt that storytelling is one of the most powerful tools in our communication toolkit. It's a tool that most people don't use to the fullest. Again, I think back of the people who, when they were invited to share their story, I think they didn't know how, or they didn't know it was okay, so they weren't using that tool. Whether you are trying to convince people that your ministries are worth both their time and maybe their financial support, or you're attempting to get people on board with the vision and values of your unique faith community, or if you're struggling to get your message across at church meetings, you need to include storytelling in your ministry toolkit. So I have a few tips to help you benefit from the power of storytelling so that your voice can be heard above all the noise going on in our world today. One of the reasons that people shy away from including stories in their communications is a mistaken notion that stories have to be complex in nature. You know, there are specific and rigorous rules that you have to follow to be able to tell your story. Nothing could be further from the truth. At its core, effective storytelling is simple. Just tell people where you were, what happened, and why you're telling them the story. A great story can start with a picture from a ministry your church is active in. Now, I love smartphones because I have a camera with me everywhere I go when I have that phone in my pocket. And I am always looking for opportunities to take pictures when I am with folks from my church. There's a simple truth that says a picture is worth 1,000 words. One caveat with that, when you're doing this for the church and you want to use that picture, is it's important to get people's permission to use their faces in your brochures or websites or Facebook, wherever you're going to use it. But if you are upfront with people, I would like to use this picture for whatever it is, they usually will go along with that. They love their church. They might not be used to talking about it yet, but they love their church. They want to help promote it. And if they really don't want their image, you know, you can crop out their face or shoot them from behind. So there's ways to get around that, but just be mindful about asking people. So it really can be that simple. There's also a Native American saying that I came across that goes like this: it takes 1,000 tongues to tell a single story. So similarly, it takes all the voices of the church to tell your church's story. Don't be the only one who goes around telling the story. Training everyone to tell your unique story is work that sometimes us pastors and other church leaders have to invest time in to get the people to understand, well, yeah, it's okay to talk about that. I have recently, I brought just a few samples. I'm not saying that I have all the answers for your publications or websites, but just recently got a couple on board. I was at our Stewardship Task Force meeting, and one of the people on the committee talked about how important giving was to her and her husband, and how happy they were that they had finally gone to online giving. It made such a difference for them. Of course, she said it much better, and I got permission to use her words in the newsletter so that everybody could hear that wonderful testimonial, really, from her, not always the pastor saying, you know, this would be a good thing to do. It's a good thing to try. So, but it takes training sometimes, and sometimes as you work on your ministry plan and your goals and your visions for the church, getting people on your work teams, your ministry teams, to use some of the same language is also an important part of telling your story, but it takes training to get people to evangelize. We're sharing the good news of our church in these words. Your story needs to have a message. I said earlier it needs to be simple, or it should be simple, but it needs to have a message, a clear takeaway for your listeners. In some cases, you can be bold and take it one step further and ask for an action. A good story should end with a sense of what your hearer, who you want to become a participant in your story, can do with what they learn from your story. For instance, one church that I was involved with wanted to find a way to regularly support the special Sundays. They were a smaller church. They had their financial struggles. They needed to pay their day-to-day reality bills in their lives, but they thought that our connection, our bigger connection, was still important. So they prayed and they did some brainstorming, and they kind of came up with an idea. And that idea began with telling some compelling stories about just what are these special Sundays. I don't know about any of your churches, but the ones I've been involved with have a good number of people who are not familiar with United Methodism and our connections, and you know, they need to be educated. So they told the stories about what is supported. They got the children involved with a noisy can offering one Sunday a month. And the kids loved it. They, I believe, continue to do this. They continue to support all of the special Sundays. I heard more than one person tell me on a Sunday, a noisy can Sunday, well, they didn't have change, but this cute little kid came up with a can. They couldn't not put something in there, so they put a $20 bill in the noisy can. You know, good job, kids. But it was a way for that church to do more, to be connected to, and that was, you know, that's how they told a story and worked a ministry. And it involved everybody in the church, from the kids to the oldest person there. Now, because we can love our own stories, sometimes we can add too many details. Now, this will backfire as people will start to tune you out, not understanding where your story is going. It can be like when your pastor gets so excited about a particular passage of Scripture. They see so many good messages in it, and they try to give it to you all in one big lump. Don't do that. You're going to lose people. It's overwhelming to them, and it can be hard to follow. So you prune out the unnecessary details. Give people just enough information to set the context and to help them experience the story, to maybe experience some of your excitement. Why are you excited about this? and then let them take it from there. On the flip side of the coin, giving too little information doesn't work either. So you have to find the right balance in your storytelling. You want people to be able to connect with you through your story. Make sure that when you're telling stories, whether it's verbally or in any of your publications or Facebook or website, that you use dialogue in your stories. That is, don't tell the story in third person. Repeat for your listeners or your readers the actual words the person in the story spoke. For example, when I share a story about the Tuesday evening soup suppers at Sparta, instead of saying, "People come for food and fellowship," I get an actual quote from one or two of the people who attend. And it might sound something like, "Sharon said, I'm not able to get out much. So these suppers are so important to me. They not only provide me a good meal, but also a much needed chance to socialize. I am so thankful for these suppers." So now you've heard from an actual, real live person who attends. Believe it or not, we are all born storytellers. It's something we have been doing all of our lives. But storytelling is an ability that improves with practice. When you are speaking, do not read your story. And I have to tell you, I had a nightmare about this last night. In my nightmare, I was being filmed and I was giving this presentation and I was reading it like this as I'm saying, do not read your story. But I don't know why I shared that with you. Spend whatever time it takes to feel comfortable with what you want to say. It may not be perfect if you're not reading it, but generally people are not looking for perfection. They are looking to be engaged. They are looking for authenticity, maybe even to be inspired. Speak directly to them. Get them to lean into, hear more about what you have to say. Now, as you polish your skills, you will find it very helpful to have a variety of stories in your toolkit. These should include stories about who are you? Who are you as a person? Who are you as a church member? And why is that church important to you? It should include stories about the church. What ministries are happening? And why are those ministries important to you? You need stories that bring the vision of your unique faith community to life. Stories that illuminate the purpose of your church and let people know why you do what you do. 2020 was a wake-up call for churches everywhere. Many of us had to scramble to figure out how to be the church during a pandemic. We didn't have Pandemic 101 in seminary. We discovered the importance of telling a consistent story across a spectrum of media platforms. That means your story needs to be shared on Facebook and other social media, including your website, not just your newsletters or brochures or bulletins. By sharing your story consistently on social media as well as on your print material, you amplify your voice and your presence wherever people are. I've had more than one person tell me, well, I found your church because I found your website. I remember hearing in a ministry conference a few years ago that social media platforms like Facebook are a whole new world where you can reach out to all kinds of people who are not connected or even familiar with church. Have you ever thought of Facebook as a mission field? If you are on Facebook, how are you telling your faith story? Is it genuine? Make sure your stories are genuine and personal. The stories that pack the most punch are the personal ones. They ring true. They tell a story. To tell a story genuinely, speak in your own voice and drop the jargon. Not that United Methodists use jargon, right? Use everyday language and speak from your heart. You can't engage your listeners or your readers when you speak churchy language that a good percentage of our population, the non-church goers, don't understand because they haven't grown up hearing it. And that population gets bigger all the time. Now, one tip in this regard for those who administer the church website is to check out your About Us page. Does it tell your unique story in an authentic way? Does it even sound like you when you read it? Or is it someone's wishful dream of what they would like the church to be? This is an ideal place to start telling your story in an authentic way. Stories grab our attention and they inspire us. They can change minds and attitudes. A well-told, authentic story can make you more trustworthy and encourage others to want to connect with you. Above all, stories are the Velcro that makes your message stick. Don't let this age-old tradition pass you by. What is your story?